Hello, welcome to a new series I am making called the Creeseland Podcast. This is the first episode of the series. My name is Aaron Crease, and I am here to discuss a very sensitive and important subject today, autism. We'll be talking to many people who have autism and their experiences with the condition to try and understand the question, what is it like to live with autism? We will also be talking to people who play a key role in the educational system, as well as families and also mentor services. Before I begin, I just want to give some background into why I'm doing this. Over the course of my life, I have met many people on the spectrum, more on that later, and I have learnt a lot from them. So it's my turn to share what I have learnt with all of you.
A disability is an ability. It should never dampen your progress in life.
My name is Michelle Hughes. I'm a media lecturer, and I teach a lot of students who over the years who are on the autistic spectrum. Let me think, it's about 18 years now. I've met a number of young people who have had the diagnosis of autism, and that has varied greatly. So my understanding of autism is that it's actually a condition that affects people in very different ways, and so from sort of, it's been very, for me actually, a really interesting experience to learn about those differences, obviously in my role as a teacher, but also from a personal point of view of learning about people and learning about, the differences between people in the world. And so for me that's been an enriching experience.
People that have autism can't understand things as well as other people do.
That you have a different perspective on life, that your view isn't like anyone else's, that you see the world differently.
Just a different way of thinking.
Hello, welcome to today's interview with Aaron Green from my Autism podcast. Interview with Tracy Landry, mother of James Landry.
It happened when I was around 8 years old. When I was diagnosed, I was autistic. Back then, I didn't even know what that meant or whether or not it meant something or anything.
Not really. It was actually more relieved that it was an answer, a reason, and to get the support that we needed.
Really minding about any disabilities or not caring about any of my surroundings. I guess not caring about disability is kind of an achievement because it made me move on with everything, working at my own pace, thinking it was normal. I still feel that way.
Having a diagnosis does benefit his learning because we get support in the classroom. He gets little cards to help him with dressing, gets help to sit properly, to write.
When it comes to other people, I've had a bunch of trouble trying to talk or say the right thing. This has happened many times, even at my own home. I find people my own age a little complex to talk to. I try to make an effort of speaking to someone, but I always say maybe the wrong thing at the wrong time, and that gets them confused about what I'm trying to say to them. Some big sentences kind of ruffle me all the time.
I think he does find it difficult because they don't see the world the same way he does. So if you have a situation, you've got 5 kids that are looking from it one point of view and James is looking for it from a totally different point of view, and it's never going to add up. You're going to have 2 and 2 and equal 5 rather than 4. He has certain friends. I think he finds it hard to socialise with kids his own age in big groups. He has a certain friend called Logan, but James has grown up with Logan, so it isn't a situation like school where he's had to go in and make new friends. To him, Logan's always been there. Whereas school friends, I think it's a lot harder for him to interact with.
Some people, if you look on, you can see him screaming, you just think he's being badly behaved, but it's because of the noise or the lights or the crowds. Sort of thing.
When it comes to general difference, I feel that some people, I've even been told that maybe some people are on another planet and I'm just somewhere else. It's like I'm staring off into something and someone can't understand or see what I see. I some days think that whether I can ever understand another person properly. I think that people just, I just can't ever get to the point where I have a conversation with someone and we can just I can just understand them. But for me, for years now, since school, I've always had the problem with understanding jokes and making friends. So yeah, I really do have a problem with talking to someone else.
It'd be difficult at the beginning of a year to build a relationship, but not necessarily. It isn't necessarily any different to somebody with other educational needs. I think what's important is to understand the educational healthcare plan that the student has, and you adapt your approach to that student with what their individual needs are.
Obviously I have an EHCP, so I can see what's been written about them, but then it's a question of just spending a little bit of time with them to sort of see how they are and how they communicate.
I have gone to places such as Spain in different regions, and I have, there were some times where I was a little scared of it because I didn't know where I was or who I was looking at. The airport was also difficult because I also got lost in it. When it comes to maybe talking to someone, I believe that I can't even understand what some people said in there, because this one woman came to me speaking Spanish, and I was, what? What the heck is going on? So, yeah, I guess different environment for me is really not okay.
In preparation for any kind of residential trip, what we would do is look at the group that's going, and we would do a risk assessment. And when we risk assess, we're looking to see, obviously, is there anything that might happen, any scenarios that might happen that could put the students at risk? And so obviously someone with autistic spectrum would be looking at how their autism affects them. So, for example, would they have difficulties with going to a place that they're not familiar with, because it's a completely new environment, and so the fact that they would be able to cope with this okay. And things like even food and things like that we need to look at. Would they be able to adapt to eating different kinds of foods? Obviously travel is tiring, and that may have an impact. Changes of environment, the sensory stuff, that could have an impact. So we would assess each student individually who has those kind of learning needs and had other kinds of issues that we'd have to take a look at. So we'd look at them all individually, and we'd work out, would risk assess for it. So we'd look at a situation if the student had a problem. And then, I suppose, at the end of the day, we would make a recommendation. So if we did actually think it wasn't support that student on a trip, then we need to discuss what we could do to support them. And if we can't support them because there's not enough staff, or we'd need to sort of talk about whether it's a good idea for them to go. Having said that, do that because we wouldn't want to limit anyone's experience based on those kind of difficulties. So we'd try to make it happen, but there'd be some instances when that might be a situation where discuss with the parent it's appropriate for the student to go on a trip. Again, We've been on trips with students with autism and had a discussion about it beforehand. We've worked out a plan of action so that things go okay. So we've already kind of prepared, I suppose. We don't just go thinking, oh, well, let's see what happens. We know what we're going to do if there was a situation that occurred.
Yeah, he has to have a schedule, so for certain days he has to know where we're going, who we're going with, like what stops it's going to be, what we're going to go look at. Say if we're going to the zoo, he's going to have to go look at the animals and he's going to have lunch.
And preferably a couple of days in advance so he can prepare himself. You have to maybe make James feel comfortable in the fact that if he wants to bring his consoles, he can, and that if he wants to compromise with a situation, then yes, that has to happen too, but only to a certain degree, bearing in mind that he is still the child. I think James finds it hard to adapt to change because children and adults alike with autism need routine. So any aspect of change breaks that cycle of normality for them. I think he finds it hard to cope because change isn't always told to him in advance for him to prepare.
Well, I think our understanding as a species of the differences between people has really developed, certainly in the last 10 years, more understanding about how people with different learning needs actually have got different things to contribute to society. So there's actually companies who actively would recruit someone with autistic spectrum as opposed to someone else because they know that the qualities that person has really suits the kind of role. So for example, in things like engineering, certain very kind of even things like architecture and stuff like that, things that are actually very dependent on detail and kind of understanding mechanical things and things like that, that it can be a benefit to be autistic. And I suppose we've grown to understand that as a culture, that actually this isn't a special need that is a problem, it's something that actually is a quality that can be used really effectively, obviously by placing the person in the right situation. If you place them in the wrong situation, in a career or whatever, and it doesn't utilise their abilities well, then they're gonna struggle. But that's the same for anyone really. But certainly there are certain careers that I would say students with autistic spectrum are quite well suited to, and it can be a benefit to those careers as well. So I think those ideas about being autistic certainly have changed. I think there's still obviously a lot of people who wouldn't understand, but there are certain career paths now that I know do actually understand that that's a really good benefit to be mildly autistic.